Well, very exciting to see everyone. So I don't know, what do you think? Time to...
Well, we're up to 82 people out of 156 registrants. So maybe give a couple more minutes, or should we just let them arrive late?
In my experience, my registrants, people register for everything and then they tend to...
They don't always come. Okay. Yeah. Why don't we go ahead and first of all, I want to thank you, Lisa Silverman, for having the idea to do this event. So round of applause, everybody, silent applause for Lisa. Yep. Because this is obviously something that people are very excited about. I also want to point out that Ellen Cole's address just got added to the chat. So if you do want to send a condolence card, there it is. So I have some general housekeeping things I want to say. First of all, we are recording this. So if you don't want to be in the recording, please turn off your camera. Also, that I'm going to ask everybody to stay muted unless it's time for one of the authors to speak, obviously, or the moderators. But we're going to ask everybody to stay muted but throughout the program. But if you have something to say or something to ask, then just please use the chat. Also, I'm going to suggest that you use speaker view. Now, of course, right now at the beginning, it's fun to just sort of look around and see who's here. But once we get started, you're going to want to look at the authors. And the best way to do that is to turn it to speaker view so that you can see them big, the biggest on your screen. And the way to do that, you probably know this by now because we're all using Zoom so much, but at the upper right of your Zoom, there's a little button that says view. And if you click on it, you'll be able to choose between speaker view and gallery view. So, oh, and in fact, I'm seeing that as the host, I can tell you to follow the host's video order. That's interesting. So maybe I can make everybody be on speaker view. I don't know. Did you all end up on speaker view when I did that? Cool. Okay, I have the power. No? Okay, well, as I said, you know how to change it to speaker view, and that way you'll see the speaker the biggest. So if that didn't cause you to see speaker, go ahead and do that for yourself if you would like to see each presenter as they come on. As the authors speak, we're going to put the addresses of their website into the chat, but that's just for your information. Don't scramble to save those because we're also going to give you a handout that has all of that information, and that's going to also be a document that I upload into the chat, and then you can download it from there to your own device so that you can save it. And later we'll put it on Hasafran and it will be available, but you'll get it tonight because you're here. I also want to take this opportunity to let you know about some other AJL events that are coming up. So on December 6th, Sunday, December 6th at 9:30 a.m. Pacific, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. in Israel, we're going to have the AJL Hanukkah Social and Open House, which is open to members and to the general public, just like this event, and it's free. And we're going to have 90 minutes of Hanukkah entertainment and schmoozing, and I will put a flyer for that into the chat as well, the flyer is a PDF and it has the link to register for that event, which is of course also on Zoom. And then also in December, we have 2 roundtables, one for each division, and those are members only events. So we've got the RAS division, our academic division, holding a roundtable, which will probably actually be of interest to both divisions. It's about archival material in synagogue libraries, and that's on Wednesday, December 1st at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And then the SSCPL division, schools, synagogues, centers, and public libraries, that division is going to hold a roundtable about weeding your library collection on Thursday, December 2nd, also at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. So I would like to introduce Sylvie Schaffer, who is going to be our moderator, and she's going to explain how this is all going to work.
Sure, Anne, thank you so much, Heidi, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We've got a fantastic lineup of authors who will be sharing with us a bit about their most recent or soon to be published titles. As I'm introducing each author, I'll also give a heads up to the next author on deck so no one is caught surprised. Each author will have just 3 minutes to speak, and if they're getting close, I'm going to flash my 30-second warning to encourage folks to wrap up. And I will be holding everyone to 3 minutes for the sake of equity, and also so that we can save a few minutes left at the end for Q&A. I'm very excited, so let's get started. First up, we have David Byspiel, and on deck heads up for Barbara Bates. So David Byspiel is a contributing writer at the New Republic, New York Times, New Yorker, Poetry, Politico, The Rumpus, and Slate. He's the author of 6 collections of poetry, 4 books of nonfiction, and he's the editor of 2 anthologies. His most recent books include A Place of Exodus, Republic Cafe, The Education of a Young Poet, The Book of Men and Women, which was chosen for the best books of the year by the Poetry Foundation. He's a recipient of Lenon, National Endowment for the Arts, and Stegner Fellowships. He has twice won the Oregon Book Award, Poetry and Nonfiction. David has taught at Stanford, University of Maryland, George Washington University, in addition to other colleges and universities. He is currently the poet in residence at Oregon State University, where he teaches in the Graduate Creative Writing Program. He's a core faculty member in the Rainier Writers Workshop MFA program, and the founder of Attic Institute of Arts and Letters. David, it is an honor to have you kick off our evening. What will you be sharing with us tonight?
Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here with all y'all. The best way to tell you about my book, A Place of Exodus, is to tell you how I came up with the idea. In 2015, after I'd published all those books you just mentioned, I realized I still hadn't written clearly about the central drama that marks my childhood, growing up devoutly Jewish in East Texas, and why I left Texas and why I never went back. And so I asked myself, what if I told that story, even though it's a story I've kept to myself for decades? What if I wrote about being educated inside the largest conservative congregation in North America, in Houston of all places, Congregation Beth Yeshurun? What if I told about my father's massive stroke that left him aphasic for the rest of his life? It took place when I was 12, an event that shattered my illusions of life. And finally, what if I wrote about coming under the tutelage of the head rabbi of that huge shul, and then in a public quarrel in front of all my litter mates, kids I'd grown up with, being kicked out of the synagogue community for good, and then leaving Texas and never returning? And then what if I did return, even for a single day? What story could I tell you to explore and interrogate the ideas of beauty and mystery and community, of home and memory, 2 subjects central to Jewish thought, and all of it in the rich tapestry of the Jewish world of Texas. That's what the book is about, A Place of Exodus. It's a Cold War story, a memoir of illness and death and love and loss and longing, all inside the kaleidoscope of contemporary Jewish life in America. And finally, I guess, one thing I learned writing the book was that to experience something afresh is that sometimes we lose sight of the fact that the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, the past we claim as our own past, in which we mythologize even, is always in need of a fresh reckoning. And that's what this book, A Place of Exodus, is about. Thank you so much.
Wow. Gosh, I can't wait to read that. What a tremendous story you've already told us just in the book talk. That sounds terrific. It's going right on the top of my TBR. And I rarely read adult books, but I'm gonna read that one for sure. Wow. Thank you. Next up, we're going to hear from Barbara Bates, and Heads Up and Dublin. You'll be next after that. Thank you again, David. Barbara Bates is an award-winning author of Jewish books for children and the creator of the blog JewishBooksForKids.com, where she interviews authors, illustrators, editors, and more. Barbara previously served on as the chair of the Sidney Taylor Book Award Committee, and she's currently the assistant regional advisor to the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators, SCBWI, in the Central California region. Barbara lives with her family in Southern California. To learn more about Barbara and her books, you can visit her online at www.barbarabates.com. Her upcoming book, DIJ, Do It Jewish, Use Your Jewish Creativity, published by Intergalactic Afikomen, will be released in December 2020. I personally love crafting, but I'll be honest, I haven't ever thought much about framing crafting in a Jewish light. So I'm really curious, Barbara, what can you tell us about this book?
And Barbara, make sure you've unmuted.
There we go. Thank you so much, Sylvie. Do you know a creative Jewish kid? Maybe you know several. Oftentimes kids want to create something, but they don't know where to begin. They need a mentor to guide them, and that's where DIJ comes in. DIJ is a gathering of artists and creatives, passionate professionals whose work reflects their own Jewish lives. These creativity experts offer young readers advice about getting started, overcoming obstacles, as well as professional tips for creative projects. For example, in the chapter on Jewish filmmaking, we meet Rachel Harrison Gordon, whose film Broken Bird is about a bat mitzvah girl balancing the challenge of divorced parents while forging her own racial and religious identities. Rachel shares her life experiences that inspired the film and also advises young readers about writing a script, casting, editing, choosing the right microphone, and more. The chapter also features father-daughter duo Peter and Nora Miller, along with film editor Amy Linton, the creators of Egg Cream, a charming film about the Jewish roots of this delicious treat. Every chapter features two creativity experts or a team of experts who serve as mentors, offering a wide range of exposure to different art forms, all within a Jewish space. In the Jewish painting chapter, we meet artist Siona Benjamin, who comes from the B'nai Israel community in India. Her magical pieces reflect her multicultural background. And Hillel Smith, whose graphic murals and street style art are contemporary and cutting edge. And there's more, 19 amazing creativity experts in all. Each chapter also includes suggested activities from Judaica made from recycled materials, to homemade matzah, to dance midrash, to graphic novels. There's something for everyone. The experts featured in DIJ offer readers meaningful insights and an up-close look at their personal creative journeys, like Ladino singer-songwriter Sarah Araste, whose musical career began with a plan. Mom, I want to start a Ladino rock band. The supportive voices in DIJ speak directly to readers. It was an honor and a joy for me to connect with and write about these incredible creative souls. Their work is a celebration of our collective Jewish community. It is my hope that DIJ will inspire kids and some adults too to dig deep, tap into their inner artists, grab a pencil, a paintbrush, a spatula, or a microphone, and get creative. And thank you so much, Heidi, Lisa, Sylvie, Jackie, all of AJL. I was muted when I thanked you, but it's just such a delight to be here.
Awesome. Wow, that sounds really fun. And it sounds like it would also make a really good gift. So maybe some folks will add that to some gift lists. And I know I'm going to get a copy, and I'm going to get a copy for my son's day school library too. It sounds like a tremendous resource. Thank you so much, Barbara. Next up, we're going to be hearing from Ann Dublin, and an on deck reminder for Carol Granick that you'll be up after Ann. Ann, if you've got a copy of your book handy, you're welcome to hold that up. If not, that's okay. Ann Dublin was born in a displaced persons camp in Austria, and she's the daughter of Holocaust survivors. She's an award-winning author of historical novels and biographies for young people. She was a teacher librarian in public and private schools for many years, as well as the librarian at Holy Blossom Temple in Toronto. She's been a longtime member of AJL, and she's a reviewer of books for AJL News and Reviews, and Ann lives in Toronto. Ann, I feel such an affinity with you as a fellow teacher librarian, and the research skills that we teach to our students certainly show in the works of historical fiction that you've written. What will you be sharing with us tonight?
Well, thank you, Sylvie, and thank you to Lisa and Heidi and Jackie too. I don't want to forget to thank them. So this is the book I'm going to share. We call it Jacob and the Mandolin Adventure. It's published by Second Story Press, and it should be out in March 2021, God willing. So, you know, this book came about in a strange way. I was working on a completely different historical novel for young people. And then I got a knock on the door. Well, not exactly. I really got an email. And a man called Dave Fleischman contacted me and he said, Anne, I've heard about you and I have a story that I think you should tell. So I said, no, I'm too busy. I'm working on something else. He said, just meet me for coffee. I want to talk to you about it. So I did. And we stayed there for about 2 hours at the coffee shop. And he told me the story about his grandfather. His grandfather was Morris Sachs. He came to Canada in the early part of the 20th century. He settled near Georgetown, Ontario, which is just a bit northwest of Toronto. He bought a farm, then he bought another farm, then he got a couple more businesses. Anyway, the important thing is, in 1927, he managed to have an agreement with the Canadian government to bring a group of Jewish orphans from Poland to Canada. This was a group of 38 teens, ages 13 to 18. Okay, so far so good. I've always liked writing about orphans, but the thing that really grabbed me was that most of them played the mandolin, and they played in a mandolin orchestra. So I love music, and I wanted to find out more about these kids. I did some research, found some fascinating things about the town of Mesrich, where they came from. Sylvie, as you said, I love doing research, so this was right up my alley. I managed to talk to some people who knew these orphans or were related to them. I have to show you this. I even took some mandolin lessons just to get the feeling of what it was like to play the mandolin. And then gradually I developed some characters and a plot. So I'm going to just read the back of the cover. When I hold this up, you'll see that the cover is different. So, you know, there are different iterations of it. 13-year-old Jacob's life is hard in 1920s Poland, where he lives in an orphanage for Jewish children. His days are brightened by playing in the orphanage mandolin orchestra. When an American benefactor arrives with the promise of a new life in Canada at a farm school, Jacob and his friends are thrilled. But can they trust this man to keep his promises? The children travel by train and by ship, facing illness and prejudice along the way. Jacob, who has become the orchestra's star player, must overcome his fears and doubts to help his friends and to fulfill his dream to one day play at the famous Carnegie Hall in New York City. And actually, these teens in the mandolin orchestra did play a concert at Carnegie Hall in April 1928. So this is a very exciting book for me to research and to write. And I'm looking forward to the feedback from everyone. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Anne, we're so looking forward to reading it and adding it to our collections. Thank you, Anne. We've got Carol Granick, and just a heads up that Jackie Jules, you'll be following Carol. Carol is a poet, an author, and chronicler. Her first book, middle grade novel in verse, Reenie's Turn, just had its debut in September, and her middle grade fiction and poetry for the very young appears or is forthcoming in Cricket, Ladybug, Badybug, Highlights, and Hello. As a writer and recently retired clinical social worker, Carol chronicles the writer's inner journey as a columnist, reporter, and guest blogger. Her poetry for adults appears in a variety of print and online journals. She lives with her husband in Skokie, Illinois, and looks forward to being able to visit their son, documentary filmmaker Adam Granick, sooner than later in NYC. Carol, please tell us about Reenie's Turn.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here and honored to be with you all. This is Reenie's Turn, which is the story of an 11-year-old Jewish dancer with lifelong performance anxiety who nevertheless wants to be a star. She is nudged by the still small voice in the Yom Kippur liturgy at the beginning of her 6th grade year, and Rini decides it's time to come out of the shadows. She has absolutely no idea where she'll find the courage, and to top that off, her growing, changing body complicates her discomfort. She takes a mistaken turn and begins a diet that leaves her further than ever from her solo and her dream. As she faces the choice between comfort with who she is now and a longing for who she could become, Rini discovers that getting your dream might mean taking a chance without any courage at all. My dream for Rini was to be able to bring the book and talk with children and their caring, guiding adults. And it came true a few weeks ago at my first virtual school visit, which will give you a sense of the underlying issues in the story as well. When I entered the room with 4th and 5th grade children, their heads nodded as I said to them, I wrote Rini's turn because I think no one should grow up believing that their value, strength, and dreams depend on the size or shape of their bodies. I also got nodding heads when I read poetry from the book that seemed to resonate with the children's issues, which felt great because I didn't want it just to be a dance story. And some of the questions that are raised in the book is, how will I find the courage to pursue my big dreams? How can I be comfortable with my changing body? And for some children, how can I be the quiet person I am and still have a strong voice? So I'm thrilled to share Rini's turn with you. I hope you will come to visit my website to learn more about Rini's turn and me. And there will soon be a wonderful curriculum guide there available to everyone, and where I can be contacted for school visits, which I love to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Carol. I hope that folks do take advantage of school visits, especially now that like we're all living on Zoom. I know I've hosted a couple visits at my school. It's always great to have authors, and it sounds like such an important work. So thank you, Carol. Next up, we've got Jackie Jules, and heads up, Susan Cusell, you're going to follow her. Jacqueline Jules is the author of 45 books for young readers, including 10, yes, 10 PJ Library selections. Drop by Drop, A Story of Rabbi Akiva, Never Say a Mean Word Again, Benjamin and the Silver Goblet, and Sarah Laughs were Sidney Taylor Honor winners. Her books, Never Say a Mean Word Again and The Hardest Word, were National Book Award finalists. Please visit her online at jacquelinejules.com. Jackie, what are you going to be sharing with us tonight?
I'm going to tell you about the generous fish. Long ago, in a village by the sea, a young boy named Reuben befriends a giant fish with golden scales. These valuable scales have the potential to provide wealth to the community, but at a great cost to the fish. Every villager has a good reason to ask for a golden scale. Devorah needs clothes for her children. Old Joseph needs money for a cane. The golden fish says he has plenty to share, but he grows weak from giving away too much, too fast. Young Reuben must decide if he has the courage to stand up to the village and save his friend. The Generous Fish was published by Wisdom Tales in January 2020. It was inspired by 2 Jewish tales. One of them was Cast Your Bread Upon the Waters, which comes from Ellen Frankel's The Classic Tales and is also found in Ben Gurion's Mimikor Yisrael. In this classic tale, a boy takes the biblical verse from Ecclesiastes literally, throwing his bread upon the waters, feeding a fish which grows to an enormous size and provides great fortune for the boy. My other inspiration came from A.J.L. Peretz's The Story of the Billy Goat, in which a magical goat gives away a little bit of his wondrous horns to anyone who asks until he has nothing left to give. Now, this may sound a bit similar to The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. One can only wonder if Silverstein had also read Peretz's The Story of the Billy Goat. But in The Generous Fish, I present a happier ending. While the generous fish does give away his golden scales, the community ultimately opts for restoration and renewal. I hope you will check out this environmental fable for Tu B'Shvat, Earth Day, and anytime you want a book about protecting resources and the environment. And I hope you'll visit my website at jacquelinejules.com to find a discussion guide that you can use in the classroom or at home. And in my last few seconds, since Hanukkah is approaching, I'd like to mention my Hanukkah handbook, Light the Menorah. This handbook provides poetry, reflections, blessings, recipes, history, crafts for every day of the holiday. And it is designed to be used as part of the candle lighting ceremony to enhance your celebration and put you in a spiritual mood before you say the blessings. And if you visit my website at jacquelinejules.com, you will also find a Hanukkah trivia quiz, which you can use just for fun to enhance your celebration. Thank you so much for having me tonight.
You bet. Thank you, Jacqueline. That was terrific. And The Generous Fish, I know you wrote the words and you can't take credit for the illustrations, but it is a gorgeous, gorgeous book, and one where the words and the pictures just marry so beautifully. So thank you for sharing that with us. Susan Cusell is going to be up next. And so I'll take this time to just give a heads up nudge to David B. Levy. You will be up after Susan Cusell. Susan is, in addition to a good friend of mine, the library director at Temple Rodef Shalom in Falls Church, Virginia, and the children's book buyer for Words bookstore in Maplewood, New Jersey. She has served on many book award committees, including the Caldecott Committee and the chair of the Sidney Taylor Book Award. Her debut picture book, The Passover Guest, illustrated by Sean Rubin, will be published in January 2021 with Neil Porter Books and imprint of Holiday House. Susan, I am privileged to have seen a digital preview of The Passover Guest, and it is spectacular. What can you share with us about it?
All right, thank you so much for that introduction, and thanks for doing this, Sylvie. So I am so excited. This is the book, and this has taken 9 years, so this is really quite a moment for me to finally be here. So The Passover Guest, as Jackie's book is also based on a story by A.J.L. Peretz. It's Der Kunstenmacher, the magician, and I've really reimagined it, and I've put it in 1933 Washington, D.C., right in the Depression, and it's about a girl who is too poor to afford Passover Seder. It happens in the spring on the first night of Passover. And on her way home on Erev Passover, she stops by the Lincoln Memorial and she sees this really amazing juggler on the steps, and she takes the last penny out of her pocket and she puts it into the juggler's hat. And the juggler says, well, you better hurry home because Passover's about to start. And she said, well, I'm not having a Seder this year. And he says, well, are you sure? Why don't you go check? And so she goes to the streets where everyone is getting ready for their Seders. And she gets home to this quiet, dingy, empty room where her parents are. There's clearly no Seder happening. And but her father says, you know, it's Passover, every door is open to us, we will find a Seder. And as they are about to walk out of the door and go into the neighborhood and find another Seder, there's a knock on their door. And it is the magician she saw at the Lincoln Memorial. And then that's where the magic starts. So I do hope you take a look. It has been really amazing. I haven't seen a lot of books set in DC, and I'm from DC, and it's been amazing to show this city that I love so much. You know, the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument, and also the cherry blossoms, which are so important to me, which is a big symbol of DC in the spring. To me, that's kind of a symbol of Passover. And we were also able to show the very historic Sixth-and-I Synagogue, which is also really this amazing Jewish landmark in Washington. It's been exciting to watch the book come to life, and I'm deeply grateful to my editor and the amazing people at Holiday House. And I really want to thank Sylvie and Heidi and Lisa and Kathy and Jackie and really all of AJL. This is my association. I'm a synagogue librarian, and I know how much work you all put in. There's probably 12 more people involved with this that I didn't even mention. So thank you to all of you and all you do.
Susan, I speak for all of us. It's our pleasure. And I know that this book took a long time, and friends, believe me, it's worth the wait. We can't wait to see it on shelves and share it with our friends and families, and it's awesome. Can't wait.
Thank you.
You bet. Next up, we've got David B. Levy, and so on deck is Joanne Levy. I think I got the Levy thing right. So David B. Levy is the chief librarian at Lander College for Women in New York City. He is also a prolific researcher and writer on the topic of Judaica librarianship and Jewish studies. David continues to be driven by a passion for self-teaching and has dedicated his life to the quest for wisdom, understanding, and knowledge for intellectual, moral, and spiritual virtue. He has an impressive bibliography of publications and several recent or forthcoming books, including the history of Judaica libraries and topics in Judaica librarianship. David, thanks so much for joining us tonight. What would you like to share with us? David?
I think he's muted.
Oh, David, can you unmute for us? And I will restart your time.
Slicha. Toda Rabba, Lisa, Jackie, Sylvie, Heidi, and AJL. I really am most grateful to be here this evening and most delighted. Tonight, I'm going to focus on a book that doesn't have a fancy cover. It's the Essays in the Philosophy of the History of Science. This work appears in a set of 13 other volumes, which include the history of Judaica libraries, topics in Judaica librarianship, essays in the halachic perspectives of librarianship, such as applying the Hafetz Chaim's Hilchot Israel Lashon Hara to the online environment. And then there are two so far that have appeared on the Art of the Book review, which actually appeal to a wide variety of audiences. They have, in fact, an ethical will and messages in the bottle. They'll be of interest to laymen, academics, day school librarians, educators. And then, as I noted in the previous conference, this book that I joint authored with Rabbi Serbronsky on Yechuzin, or genealogical research. But tonight I'm going to focus on the philosophy of history, and which features mostly Jewish scientists. If I could just pause for a moment. Baruch atah Adonai, Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shakol niyeh b'devaro. And the essays in the philosophy of science really are wide-ranging. Most of the scientists are Jewish, some religious, some not. The perspective tends to focus on how halacha comes to bear on recent trends of important revolutionary importance in science, such as discoveries in stem cell research, cloning, astrophysics, evolution, genetics, genetic engineering, fertility treatments such as IVF, organ transplants, extending life to the terminally ill, brain death controversy, the imperative to heal, for instance. And the method applies to these cutting edge areas of science analogies of old case law that are found in rabbinic texts, particularly the Talmud and responsive texts, such as the Shulchan Aruch and the Talmud bring down that it was thought that a wood chopper chopping wood, or somebody administering salt to the tongue of a gozis, would increase the person's life longer. So the question the rabbis ask, can you withdraw the wood chopper chopping wood, or the person applying the salt? So I show that method repeatedly. Now, there are many other things we touch on. Secular scientists such as Oliver Sacks, Menachem Fish, who's a philosopher of mathematics. And it's a wonderful collection. I hope you'll enjoy it. I can't say everything about it. It really, Tobis Danzig's Number the Language of Science, Mandelbrot's Fractals, it came to rise in two parts. It was supposed to be 2 volumes. The next volume that's going to appear is on the enigmatic, mysterious, and mystical aspects of Judaism, which is the flip side analog at the limits of science.
No, and David, we unfortunately are at the limits of your 3 minutes, but wow, that just sounds so fascinating and really important, covering both a wide breadth of topics, and it sounds like you go really deep too. So very impressive scholarship, and I'm sure that folks who want to know more know how to reach you. A document went into the chat, a link to a document went into the chat. Thank you, Heidi, for that. And folks can follow up with you directly. Thank you so much, David. Next up, we're going to be hearing from Joanne Levy, and on deck is going to be Stacy Ramey. So Joanne Levy's love of books began at a very early age. The youngest of 4 children, she was often left to her own devices and could frequently be found sitting in a quiet corner with her nose in a book. Me too. Since leaving the corporate world in 2013, Joanne spends her non-writing time helping other authors with their administrative needs as a virtual author assistant. She lives in rural Ontario, Canada, with her husband and pets. You can check out her website, which will go into the chat, and her Instagram, which I highly recommend. In her non-writing and working time, Joanne enjoys working with wool to make weird and funny felt creatures. Joanne, I have to say, I loved looking at your Instagram and seeing your felted 2020 dumpster fires and other curious crafts. While I would love to talk about your felt crafts another time, I am just as eager to hear about your book, Fish Out of Water. What can you share with us about it?
Thank you so much. And we can talk later about felting. I can talk about felting all day. Before I talk about Fish Out of Water, I just want to take a second to say hi to everybody and thank you so much for the opportunity to chat about my books. I'm honored to be in such great company with wonderful authors, and David is a hard act to follow. My books are probably the opposite of his. So it's great to be here with some friends and soon to be friend authors. And in case my name sounds familiar to you out there, I'm the author of Small, Medium at Large, which was a Sidney Taylor notable book and a PJ Arway selection. It was my first book out in 2012. And since then, I've been committed to writing about Jewish kids so that Jewish kids can see themselves in the books they read. And so non-Jewish kids can see that while we may pray at different places, eat different foods, or celebrate different holidays, we have even more things in common, the kinds of things that make us all human. So before I take a minute to tell you about Fish Out of Water, which is my most recent book, I just wanted to draw a bit of attention to Double Trouble, which is a current PJ Arway selection. It's about an insecure tween who fakes having a twin sister to impress her new friend who just moved in next door. Think Judy Blume meets Mrs. Doubtfire, and that's pretty much the story there. It's a book about being true to yourself, a theme that is also strong in Fish Out of Water. This is Fish Out of Water. And Fish Out of Water is about a boy named Fishel who wants to learn how to knit socks as part of his bar mitzvah project. Unfortunately, he gets pushback from people in his life, from his best friend to members of his own family, telling him knitting isn't for boys and that he should participate in sports instead. Thankfully, Fish does find allies in his rabbi, a Zumba instructor, his knitting club, and a teacher who help him realize he knew all along what is best for him and how best to give of his authentic self. Like Double Trouble, this is a book about being true to yourself, but it also touches on topics like gender stereotypes and toxic masculinity with a light and age-appropriate hand. Double Trouble and Fish Out of Water are from Orca Book Publishers and are part of their Currents line. While these books are great for all kids 8 and up, they're short, rapid, and engaging reads that are printed in an ultra readable format with lots of white space and are in dyslexia-friendly fonts. I have more books coming in 2021 from Orca as well, though these are single title, full-length middle grade books, including one set at a Jewish summer camp called The Sun Will Come Out, and that's out in April, and another book set in a family-run Jewish funeral home called Sorry for Your Loss. This one was inspired by my dad, who runs the single small Jewish funeral home in my hometown. I encourage you to check out my website at joannelevy.com for more about all of my books and for downloadable activities and discussion guides. And check out my virtual visits web page where you can learn about virtual school visits and library visits. And I love doing virtual visits. Thank you so, so much.
Wow, that is fantastic. I am sold by Judy Blume meets Mrs. Doubtfire. That's like one of the best cross matches I've ever heard. Sounds like terrific books. And I love the way that Orca really makes accessible stories even more accessible through their formatting. So thank you for thinking about readers who can use that extra help. Next up, we've got Stacy Ramey, and on deck after that, we're going to hear from Lois Ruby. So Lois, get ready. And Stacy, you're going to be up next. We've got Stacy, who is an award-winning author of The Sister Pact, a YALSA 2016 popular paperback. Her sophomore novel, The Homecoming, was awarded a Florida Book Award. Kirkus called her third book, The Secrets We Bury, a sensitive, funny, and sometimes awkwardly romantic story of survival and self-awareness, and also named it to its list of 13 YA books both you and your teen will enjoy. Tonight, she'll be talking with us about It's My Life, about a Jewish high school junior with cerebral palsy who's on the verge of giving up on herself until she learns that her childhood crush has moved back to town. She lives in Wellington, Florida, with her husband and an ever-changing number of rescue dogs. When she's not writing, she engages in Netflix wars with her grown children or beats her husband in Scrabble, all while watching the Florida Gators and Penn State Nittany Lions play. Go Gators. Welcome, Stacy.
Hi, thanks for having me. This is a fantastic event. And just like the AJL conference, I already have a list of books that I'll be buying right after this. So thank you guys for feeding my ever-growing TBR pile. Appreciate it so much. Anyway, so this is my book, It's My Life. And I had nothing to do with this gorgeous cover, but I'm so grateful to have it. This book was actually the first book I ever wrote. It is a young adult. And because publishing is so weird, at least it has been for me, it is the fourth young adult book that came out. So totally out of order. The inspiration for this book was I'm a speech pathologist by day. And I've been so lucky to work with so many different kids over the years. And at one point I owned my own practice in Gainesville. And this book is based on my favorite, you're not supposed to have a favorite, but my favorite patient. She didn't have cerebral palsy. She had Brett's disease, which is a much more, left her very, it was very difficult for her to move or talk or say anything. And but she was my favorite because she had this incredible wit about her. And she had this power, she had incredible taste in books, which I shared with her. And getting to know her was such a privilege. And so I wanted to write a book about a story about her. And my favorite thing about her is she never gave anybody any energy who didn't believe in her. And that's like a lesson I really need to take to this day. But this book is about a girl who has cerebral palsy, and she gives up on herself because she finds out that her cerebral palsy was not just something that happened. It was caused by a birth injury, and she finds out her parents have lied to her about it. And she gives up on herself in so many different ways. And I know we all have done that. I know we have all, but she finds her way back because she tries to help the boy that she's had a crush on, who's moved back to town. She tries to help him kind of navigate the school and his classes, and she does it anonymously through texts. It's a cute story. It's a fun story, but it also talks about important things like who should be making medical decisions, and, for children who are growing. And also it has siblings that she adores and who adore her, and a family that supports her 100%, even when she's not doing what they want her to do. So anyway, I hope you'll take the time to get to know Jenna. She's one of my favorite, and I hope she'll be yours too.
I'm sure she will be. I mean, that just sounds so readable, right? You've got the heavy stuff, but it sounds a little funny and a little cute too. So I think that's just the kind of book that teens need and teens love. So I can't wait. I definitely added it to my TBR. Thank you again, Stacy. Next up, we're going to hear from Lois Ruby, and on deck is going to be Brianna Sayers. So Lois Ruby, I think this might have been the funnest bio that I got, just personal here. It says, Lois Ruby has been a waitress in a truck stop restaurant, a statistical typist, the director of a summer day camp and Hebrew school, and an art and music librarian, a full-time mother, community volunteer, and office manager for a psychologist. But she says she doesn't relish any of those jobs, as well as her real job, which is writing, visiting schools to talk about writing, and teaching writing. Lois, I understand you're going to share your latest book with us, Red Menace, tonight?
Yes, thank you. It's 1953, the Korean War is ending, but the Cold War simmers on, and Stalin has just died. Queen Elizabeth is crowned. The hula hoop is all the rage, and the New York Yankees are hot. Also hot is a fanatic Wisconsin Senator, Joe McCarthy, who's convinced that communists run rampant throughout the whole country and that he is called upon to root them all out at any cost. So this is the world that Marty Raffner is living in, summer of 1953. He's preparing for his bar mitzvah, but what's really important in his life is baseball, especially the Yankees, and especially Mickey Mantle. But then the FBI shows up at his house, threatening to deport his mother to Poland. They believe that she has been associating with communists. Whether or not she has been, that's what they threaten they're going to do. And Marty's world just absolutely turns topsy-turvy. And his family is getting threats from neighbors, and he's kicked off his baseball team. His friends desert him, except for one friend, Amy Lynn, whose father is also under suspicion as a communist and who mysteriously disappears. And then the FBI agents start camping out outside his home and following his family everywhere, even to the dentist. And they're going through his mail and through his garbage, and they're climbing up trees and looking in the windows. They're looking for evidence against his mother. What's worse is that family friends Julius and Ethel Rosenberg have been cooling their heels in prison for 2 years now. They've been convicted as spies for selling bomb secrets to the Russians, and incidentally, they were convicted by a Jewish judge. And before this June is out, one Saturday, minutes after Shabbat ends, they will be escorted to the electric chair, and they will leave behind 2 young sons around Marty's age. So Marty is gripped by fear, and he wonders if this could happen to the Rosenberg family. Could it happen to my family? Could it happen to my mother? Somehow the story is also full of humor, even while the anger and the worry mount in Marty. So how is he going to relieve all that stress? Of course, he's going to write memos to Mickey Mantle. Does he dare send them? Because if he does and the FBI finds out, are they going to suspect that Mickey Mantle is also a communist? And then what happens? Newbery winner Claire Vanderpool says, Red Menace is a compelling and engaging story of a tumultuous and painful time in our history. The novel is based on experiences that I myself lived through and it is suitable for readers from age 10 up through adults. And I hope you will find it and read it and share it with children in your lives, and see if you can figure out why the editor of this book says that this book today is unbelievably relevant to our times. So thank you for having all of us, and thank you for all of you readers and librarians and teachers and parents out there who make books come alive for kids.
Oh my gosh, Lois, you just made that story come alive just telling us about it. I was so relieved when you told us there was some humor, because I noticed that I was clenching my fists, and then I let go of that when you brought in the Mickey Mantle memos. So that's just an era of history that I found so fascinating. And I can't wait to read it and put it in my elementary and middle school library. It sounds terrific. Thanks again. We're going to be hearing from Brianna Sayers next, and Eileen Sherman, you're on deck. Brianna is the author of many picture books, including the best-selling Where Do Diggers Sleep? Where Do Diggers Sleep at Night series. She is also proud to be the founder of Intergalactic Afikomen, a new children's publisher whose mission is to produce out-of-this-world Jewish picture books for today's Jewish kids. Brianna, I loved stopping by when we were in person at ALA last time, the booth for Intergalactic Afikomen, and got to see some of those books. What would you like to share with us tonight?
You, Sylvie. So I want to express my gratitude to Lisa, Heidi, Sylvie, and the AJL for putting together this incredible event. And I'm so very honored for the opportunity to share my book today. So, have you ever felt just a bit stressed getting ready for Passover? Now imagine you can't get home in time for Seder because you're stuck in outer space. That's what happens to Asteroid Goldberg and her parents as they are zipping through the solar system to fly home from Pluto in my just blasted off picture book, Asteroid Goldberg, Passover in Outer Space. Attention Goldberg rocket, you'll have to wait to land. Oi, Passover in outer space was not what they had planned. Now, when I mentioned to Miri Pomerantz at the Jewish Book Council that I had written a picture book about celebrating Passover in a rocket ship, she replied, "Isn't that what we're all doing right now?" And suddenly I realized that while I thought I had simply written a fun and funny picture book about Passover in outer space, and I truly believe that funny Jewish books are vitally important for today's Jewish kids, I had also written a book about our current situation in the world. How can we celebrate our Jewish holidays in a time when we can't leave our homes and go about business as usual? Yes, Asteroid Goldberg is a creative and mighty young Jewish girl, and she actively reimagines Jewish ritual, just like many of us are doing right now. What would a Seder be in space? The grown-ups had no clue, but their Space Whiz Asteroid took a more creative view. Asteroid plans a Seder for herself and her family that is like none you've ever seen. How is Asteroid's Passover Seder different from every other Seder? Well, Jupiter's moons are her matzo balls, the Big Dipper is her ladle, and she gets her maror from Jupiter's red spot. Still, Asteroid Seder is a lot like yours and mine. She makes sure to invite her family and friends from all around the solar system. Her dad hides the Afikomen in Robot Dog's head, and Asteroid and Corona open the door for Elijah, or should I say they pop up the space hatch. And yet, there's one big difference between this Seder and many others I've been to. Instead of asking, "Are we done yet?" Asteroid shouted, "No! This Seder wasn't long enough. It can't be time to go." Asteroid said, "Let's stay the week, then head on back to base." And her family all agreed, next year in outer space. Thank you all so very much. And I'd love the opportunity to come to your school, your Zoom room, and do a virtual visit. So thank you.
All right, Bashana Habab, Outer Space. Thank you so much. It's guys, it's really fun, and I can't wait to see what else Intergalactic Afikomen has going on for us too in the future. Friends, we've got just 3 more authors to hear from, so if you're starting to get fidgety, stretch, but do come back. We are going to hear next from Eileen Sherman, and Melissa Stoller is going to be following her shortly after that. Thank you again. Here we go. We've got Eileen Sherman. She's an Emmy Award winner, an author, a playwright, lyricist, television writer, and producer of theater and music. Her young adult novel, Monday in Odessa, received the National Jewish Book Award. Her YA novel, Independence Avenue, earned the International Reading Association's Teacher's Choice Award. When writing musicals, Eileen collaborates with her sister, Gail C. Bluestone. For the stages of Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center to airwaves worldwide, the Bluestone Sisters' work features some of Broadway's most celebrated artists. Their recording, The Odd Potato, the Broadway album, a musical on CD for Hanukkah, stars 20 award winners. Earning 5-star reviews for her story and recording performance of The Violin Players, readers' favorite wrote, "I felt the excitement from the very first page, and it kept me glued until the very end." Eileen, welcome. Please tell us about The Violin Players.
Well, thank you for having me. You know, when I was a little girl, certain country clubs dubbed themselves exclusive, meaning no Jews or Blacks allowed. And as young parents, my husband and I moved to the Midwest. I wanted to rent a home in a very charming area. The recruiter simply said, "You wouldn't be welcome there." By the time my daughter entered high school, I hoped things would be different, but sadly, she heard anti-Semitic and racial slurs in the hallways. That's when I decided to write The Violin Players. Set in the 1990s, it's about a Jewish high school girl from New York who finds herself in a small Midwestern town. No one suspects that Melissa Jensen is Jewish, but for the first time in her life, she confronts anti-Semitism. What she should do and how she should handle it all get entangled in her romantic crush on Daniel Goodman, the only Jewish student in school, who also shares her passion for playing baseball and the violin. The Violin Players would be my 3rd YA novel to be published by the Jewish Publication Society. And at that time in the late 1990s, I received many invitations to speak around the country. But a few years ago, my daughter, now a mother herself, suggested I record and produce an audiobook of the Violin Players. Since I come from the world of theater as a playwright, lyricist, and producer, it all felt rather natural. Audiobooks claim their own group of prizes, one being a Grammy Award. And this fall, The Violin Players is a first-round contender for Best Spoken Word Album. Now, I don't kid myself. I am not expecting a Grammy nomination. I'm up against Oscar and Tony Award winners. Still, I did receive comments that confirm why I recorded the audiobook. A Christian listener wrote me that he listened to the Violin Players twice because it made him reflect how he had not spoken up when colleagues made anti-Semitic remarks and the shame he now felt. The Violin Players is now streaming on all major digital platforms. JPS, an imprint of the University of Nebraska Press, just released the paperback. And in 2021, I partner with the Tannenbaum Foundation, whose mission is to inspire religious tolerance worldwide. We shall be creating a special Zoom event to discuss how the story lends itself to arts education, another passion of mine as a college professor of dramatic literature. So please let me know if I can serve your community with a Zoom event. I have no illusions. The Violin Players will not eradicate bigotry, but just maybe it will serve as a reminder to speak out against it. Again, thank you so much to everyone for having me.
So, okay, just on a personal note, as someone who was a teenager in the 1990s, This is definitely going on my list. And it sounds like this is a title that we need to keep not just our eyes out for, but our ears open for. So I hope that folks who are joining us here tonight will go ahead and take a listen to the violin players. Thank you again, Eileen. We've got Melissa, who's going to be followed by Lisa, who will be our last speaker tonight. Melissa Stoller is the author of several works for young readers, as well as the Family Book Club Guide, the Parent-Child Book Club, connecting with your kids through reading. She's an active member of SCBWI, a volunteer with SCBWI Metro New York, a regional ambassador for the Chapter Book Challenge, a moderator for the debut picture book study group, an assistant and a blogger for the Children's Book Academy, and a member of the 12 by 12 Picture Book Writing Challenge. A former practicing attorney and legal research and writing instructor, Melissa lives in Manhattan with her husband, 3 daughters, and 1 puppy. Melissa, what are you going to share with us tonight?
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy and honored to be here tonight. Based on my family history, Sadie Shabbat Stories is a book about family connections and the power of storytelling. Sadie loves listening to Nana's tales, especially about the traveling candlesticks, Kiddush cup, and challah cover they use every Friday night. Each Shabbat heirloom allows Nana to tell a new story surrounding Sadie's relatives. As Sadie listens to the stories, she wonders if she will ever be able to use her voice to tell her own Shabbat stories, just like Nana. Illustrator Lisa Goldberg's stunning artwork was inspired by the artist Marc Chagall, and Lisa added a delightful secondary storyline featuring a cat and dove. Readers will really enjoy searching for both. I was inspired to write this book after hearing several stories over the years from the storytellers in my family. My father told tales about how he and his mother were separated from his father for almost 10 years during World War I. Also, I heard stories about my husband's grandfather, who left Russia in 1917 when he was just a teenager. He and his younger brother traveled alone to find a better life in America. And my Nana told me many stories about how she grew up in New York City in the early 1900s. Finally, I always kept in mind the inspiration of my 3 daughters. I encouraged them to use their strong voices, just like Sadie. I wove these varied threads of inspiration together. The ideas spun and twirled around in my imagination for years. I'm so happy that the book is finally out in the world and that it highlights Jewish culture, life cycle events, and food for Jewish and non-Jewish readers to enjoy. I hope readers connect with the idea that we are all storytellers and we all have unique heritages and family heirlooms that make up the fabric of our lives. We all have our own voices that we can use to tell stories, sing songs, create artwork, and more. Whether your voice is big or small, loud or quiet, it's your special voice. I tell that to students all the time when I do virtual visits. And especially now when we can't always be close to family, it's so important for children to connect with their relatives, and especially older family members, to hear and record their voices and their stories. Children and grandparents or other relatives can even write stories together. I hope that Sadie Shabbat Stories will encourage families to have conversations about the stories and the storytellers in their lives. Please check out my website, which includes a curriculum guide for the book, coloring pages, and also information about virtual visits, which I really love to do. Thank you so much, Sylvie, to Heidi, Lisa, AJL, and to everyone here tonight. Thank you so much.
Awesome, thank you. That sounds terrific. Anything that combines Shabbat, food, and secondary stories with animals, I'm so there for it. Thank you. And last but not least, we've got Lisa Weimer, who's going to close out our showcase, but please don't rush off. Not only will we have some time for Q&A after Lisa's presentation, we also have a few more AJL announcements about upcoming events. You won't want to miss it. So please stick around after Lisa. Here we go with Lisa. Lisa Weimer is an award-winning educator with over 20 years of teaching experience. Her second young adult novel, The Assignment, was published by Delacorte Press and is nominated for a Best Fiction for Young Adults by YALSA and ALA. To date, The Assignment will also be published in Russia, Poland, Italy, and South Korea. She now has a monthly column about Jewish Kidlit in the Wisconsin Jewish Chronicle, so feel free to contact her about your books for consideration. A graduate of UW-Madison, Liza has 2 married sons and lives in Milwaukee, Wisconsin with her husband, Jim. Lisa, please share with us a little bit about the assignment. Lisa, are you there?
So sorry. I just wanted to say, Sylvie and Heidi and Lisa, thank you so much for this incredible event through AJL. And to my fellow authors, it has been an honor to hear all about your books. I am here to talk about the assignment that was recently published. And the assignment was inspired by real events. I ended up in the small town when this took place, when it hit the media. So if you're interested in finding out more about the behind the scenes information, please go to my website, lisaweimer.com, and the remarkable story is posted on there. This is a novel about 2 brave teens who refuse to do an assignment that they receive from their history teacher, asking them to pretend that they're Nazis and recreate the Wannsee Conference, where the 15 Nazi leaders gathered together to implement the final solution. And this teacher asked the students to debate this from the Nazi perspective. Pro, exterminate Jews, and con was sterilization, work camps, and ghettos. And these 2 brave teens refused to do this assignment. And I'd like to share just a few behind the scenes information about this. Before I could even start writing this novel, I had to ask the question, why would a teacher give an assignment like this? So when I came up with that idea and understood the deeper meaning, I went ahead and said, okay, I can write this novel. Then I also looked at it from the perspective of a teacher. How could I impart this information to young adults and to people, a wide range of ages? So you're going to get the perspective from the young adults who were brave to speak out, and then secondary characters. And what you need to know is an assignment like this has such a much greater impact than just the students involved in the classroom, the class, the school, the community at large, and then a global level. So I utilize articles and comments and other means like video chats in my novel to make this interesting and intriguing for the readers to find out what happens. So it's truly a privilege to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for a great evening.
Thank you for sharing with us about that, Lisa, and for writing this important book. I think it's really going to make folks think about what are the impacts of the assignments that we are giving, and what does it mean to tell people to pretend to be something destructive? Like, what good can come from that? So thank you so much, Lisa, and that's my timer. So hey, guys, we made it to the end, but we're not done yet. We've heard from all of our authors tonight. Thank you to everyone. You all did an amazing job. My TBR grew by 13 books. So I think next we're going to hear more from Heidi about some AJL happenings. So I'm going to turn it back to Heidi. Thanks, y'all.
All right, thank you, Sylvie. An amazing job as moderator. You make it look so easy, and I know it is not. So first of all, I wanted to say that this event, as you know, was open to both AJL members and non-members. But if you're not a member now, that doesn't mean you couldn't be a member in the future. So I'm hoping that you will consider joining us if you are not already a member. And I'm going to put in the chat the link to the join section of our website. It is a wonderful international organization, not only for librarians, but for people who have any interest in the world of Jewish libraries and Jewish books. I also wanted to let you know, because we do have a lot of authors of children's books and fans of children's books here, I wanted to make sure that you all know about a couple of other AJL related projects. One of them is the Sydney Taylor Schmooze, which is a mock award blog that we began just this year. And that is, obviously for the Sydney Taylor Book Award, it is a blog where we review the books that are coming out this year, the same books that are being considered for this year's Sydney Taylor Book Award. And then we will be having a vote in early January where we will vote on what we think would be the winner. And we'll sort of try to predict what the real award is going to be, but we won't know that until it's announced very excitingly that, our awards are now announced at ALA, at the Youth Media Awards. The big press conference that they have. So here in the chat, I'm putting the Sydney Taylor Schmooze. It's a great blog. We have so many wonderful volunteer reviewers who write for us. And so I hope that you will check out that blog. I also want to make sure that you all know about the Jewish Kidlit Mavens, which is a Facebook group. It's actually not an AJL project, but since it's run by me and Susan Kusel, it kind of is, even though officially it's through my podcast, The Book of Life. That is the umbrella organization for it. But it's a group of 750 plus, I think we're up to 758 as of today, people who, just like you, are big fans of Jewish children's literature. And so that is a very great forum to be able to discuss these matters. So I would also like to announce again, for those of you who are here at the beginning, you heard this, but other people who arrived later did not hear, that in December we have an AJL Hanukkah party on Zoom on Sunday, December 6th at 9:30 a.m. Pacific, 12:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. in Israel. 90 minutes of Hanukkah entertainment and schmoozing, open to members and the general public, and it's free. I'm going to put a flyer for that into the chat. This is going to be a document that you can download, and I will also again put the other documents. I'm going to put the handout. And also David Levy had a handout of his own because he had multiple titles. So I'm going to put all of those documents once again into the chat, and you can click on them to download them to your own device. I would love to take a group screenshot of the authors holding up their books. So if I switch to gallery view so that I can see you now, I can see the authors and I can see others. So I will do that now. But authors, if it's possible for you to stay on after everyone else leaves, it will make a sort of a cleaner picture. But let's do this now just to make sure that we have the opportunity in case anybody really does have to go. So everybody got your book? Smile. Okay, beautiful. Terrific. Okay, thank you so much for that. But authors, if you can stick around after the event for a couple of minutes, please do that. And Kathy Bloomfield, our president, is here. Kathy, do you want to just say hi to everybody as president, official hello?
Hi, yeah, thank you, Heidi. First of all, I want to thank Heidi and Lisa and Jackie Ben-Ephraim for putting this together. This is an amazing gathering of members and authors. And I also now have a list, which I, already have 100 lists, but another 15 books or so to add to my to be read pile. You all did a great job. I have to call out Sylvie, who ought to get paid for this because she's like amazing. And I want to thank you, Sylvie. I'm not sure there's anyone on the planet who could do this the way you do. And we truly, truly, truly appreciate you. I hope we will do it again soon. I think Heidi covered all the bases regarding all of the upcoming events that we're doing. I encourage you to join AJL. We're having monthly roundtables of this kind. We have a variety of topics that we talk about, and we'd love to have you be part of this organization. If you are a member of ALA and you will be attending the midwinter conference, we are going to do a schmooze and bring your own nosh event on the Sunday of the midwinter of ALA midwinter. And also the final thing is just to let you know, the AJL board voted yesterday that our conference in June will be a virtual conference. So we will be planning to have that late June, more information obviously to come on that. So I just wanted to let you all know that. Pardon me?
Has there been a call for papers yet that I missed?
No, not yet. Not yet. We had to get the vote from the board first. So now we will be working on the moving forward part. So Yeah, definitely. And that's all I have, except just thank you so much for all of you participating in this amazing afternoon, evening. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Kathy. And thank you to everybody for being here. We had a great turnout. It was very exciting, and the authors all certainly appreciate your attention and your purchase of their books as the Hanukkah season approaches. I'm sure you could use some of those for gifts. So thanks for coming, everybody, and have a great afternoon and evening. Oh, if anybody had any questions, though, for the authors, we still have time to take a few questions.
Oh. Yeah. Annette says, what about all the authors that didn't share their books? They're on this, but we love you too.
Yes, good point, Lisa. That we had to, you know, you can't have everybody at this at one event. You would just be here all day. So we picked people who applied in time and who had recent books, and that was how we dealt with that. But we will, I'm sure, create more opportunities for more authors to speak. But just before we go, does anybody have any questions or anything for the authors who spoke today? And if you do, unmute and speak up.
I have one question. I forget the name of the author, the one who did the science fiction, the Passover in Space.
Brianna Sayers.
Brianna, yes. There was a, I'm trying to remember what the name of there was another science fiction story which partly took place in space. I think on Venus Have We Got a Rabbi. I wonder if that was an inspiration at all for her.
I'm not familiar with that one, but I would love to read it because I'd love to read as much about Jewish space stuff as possible. But I'm not familiar with it. But I first wrote this book about, the draft first started about 15 years ago. So it took a while to reach the book we're reading today.
Thanks for that question, Stephen. Etta, were you about to ask a question?
I was just going to comment that Miami Book Fair is going on right now this whole week, and it's virtual too. And if any of you are like me, addicted to listening to authors talk about their books, which I love, you can go on to MiamiBookFairOnline.com.
Yes, good point.
Yeah, it's great.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Anybody else
Thank
have
you.
any questions? I'm sorry, Sylvia, I've kind of taken over from you because I was already unmuted, but you can jump back in if you want to. But is there anybody else who wants to ask or make a comment?
If you're closing up this Zoom, one of the things that we've done is everybody, in order to thank particularly all these authors, is that when you say your final thank yous, we all unmute and we can clap because we want to hear the audience.
That's a lovely idea, Lisa. I like that a lot. Before we do that, can we just make sure if anybody else had a question or comment, this is your final chance.
Hi, I have a question for somebody. I don't want to put him on the spot, but there's a wonderful author I know in the audience, Richard Michelson. Hi, Richard. I love your book about Martin Luther King and Abraham Joshua Heschel. I used to be the librarian at the Heschel School for years. I just want to thank you for that book. And if you're willing to say what made you write that book.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for jumping in as I asked you to do. And so nobody would know. I actually have a bunch of talks I give about why I did that book, but basically, I grew up in a neighborhood where I was the only white kid in my school. I was very attuned to racial issues. I grew up in East New York, Brooklyn. When it was a Jewish neighborhood, but we were the only ones who did not leave, not for any social reasons, more for economic reasons. So, you know, it was it was just natural. I was always interested in people who reach across the aisle, and to other people. And I was thrilled for Moment Magazine this summer. I did an hour talk with Susanna Heschel, his daughter, about it. And I think that's on Moment's website if you're interested. But thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. And Rich, of course, is a past Sydney Taylor Book Award winner. So it's good to see you here.
Multiple past.
Yeah, multiple.
Yes. Yes. Okay, wonderful. All right, last call. Anybody else have anything to say? Well, thank you all so much for coming. So let's do this, Sylvia, and you jump in if there's anything else that I'm missing. So two things. One, let's unmute and give them an actual round of applause. And then secondly, authors, please stick around so we can take another group photo. All right, unmute everybody.
Oh, that was fun, everyone.
Kol hakavod.
Kol hakavod.
Hey.
See you in December. I'm leaving you guys to go to, you guys take your photo. I'm out of here. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks everybody for coming.
Heidi,
Yeah.
I just thought a non-author question.
Okay.
I see what we're doing nationally, which is great. Do you know what the individual chapters are doing, or are they kind of?
As far as I know, chapters haven't really been doing, I'm not aware of chapters doing anything. If they are, they've kept it within their own chapters. But certainly with how now everybody knows how to use Zoom, chapters could have their own meetings that way. That would be pretty easy to do. So it's a good point. Maybe I should bug the chapters and point out that that's something they could be doing. Thank you for bringing it up.
I mean, maybe they can kind of, the chapters can invite to the national events and the national committee invites to the chapters, at least during this, because that kind of disperses the workload of doing things like this.
All right. Well, thank you for pointing that out because I hadn't really been thinking about that. It's a good thing to keep in mind.
Yay, Book Life podcast.
Yes, thank you for that comment, Figgy. That's great. Thanks. Okay, so I guess what I'm going to do is ask everybody who wasn't a speaker to go ahead and clock out because I do want to take a group shot with just the speakers from our presentation today. Thanks for coming.
Have a good night.
Night. Bye, Stephen.
How many participants did you have?
We were floating up around 85 at the high end. So I think whoever was saying that people register for things and then don't necessarily come to them, I think that is certainly true. But we're going to have the recording, so some people might have figured they will just watch it later. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and just remove the people who were audience members and not speakers. Let's see. That I have to unclick report to Zoom because they didn't do anything wrong.
Lisa, I want to tell you that I lived in Milwaukee for a couple years and I went to University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. So I can just imagine where you are.
Oh, that's so neat, Anne. That's so great. I'm in a suburb of Milwaukee in Fox Point. So that's so great.
I know where that is. Yeah. Well, I lived in a house not far from campus. So I remember it well. I remember the wind blowing off the lake as I walked back and forth to school. And yeah, it was
Go Badgers.
Yeah, well, it was an interesting 2 years, that's for sure.
Wow.
But when I finished my degree, I went on a tour all over the state, you know, Oshkosh and Sheboygan and Green Bay and you name it. I think I was in every little town in Wisconsin. So it was really fun.
So neat. Beautiful connection.
So looks like we did lose at least one author, David Beispiel.
Yeah,
he said he had to go.
He had to go. Okay, but everybody else, could you please hold up your book? Everybody smile your beautiful smiles. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
Here we go. All right. That is awesome.
And Heidi, you know, this isn't even the final artwork on the cover. This is
Oh,
just
really?
the ARC. So we'll see what happens.
But it's good that you had something to hold up.
And
Yeah.
if it makes you feel better, I held up a F and G. So.
Oh, okay. As we say in Yiddish, noch besser. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I thought everybody was really fascinating. I loved hearing from all of you. And I wanted to thank our hosts again, Heidi and Sylvie and Lisa. It really, thank you so much.
Our pleasure. Thank you for participating. It was a great program. I think everybody really enjoyed it a lot.
It was
It's
really
wonderful.
fun. Thank you
Really
so
wonderful.
much.
Well, thank you for including us.
Sylvie, you were amazing. That was not
Yeah,
an easy job
totally.
at all. You were
Oh, yes,
amazing.
Sylvie,
Thank you,
I-
thank you, thank you.
Or you had a
You are an
personal comment for
amazing
everyone. It was so
daughter.
nice.
Amazing.
Was it easier than the summer one?
It was marginally easier. No, the summer one was banana
The
pants.
summer one was crazy.
Well, that was also like on the fly. This one you knew was coming.
At least I had, time to like Google the authors and like look at your bios and maybe read a review of your book, and certainly added everything to my TBR. So really fun for me too. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. It was a blast.
And you didn't have
You
to
were amazing. You were amazing. Oh, sorry, Barbara.
Really.
You didn't have to hold up your sign for anybody.
That's right.
No, you held it up, but nobody was looking at you because they were reading their scripts. Because I would see you holding it up, but I would see the author was looking over here. So we have, if we need to do, I mean, everybody came in pretty well, but I think we need to find a different method of giving people like maybe we need to get everybody's phone numbers and send them a text that they'll see popping up or something.
Just
Maybe.
a loud buzzer, you know.
Right. All
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
Well, thank you all
Thank
so
you
much.
so much.
Thank
Have a
you
good
so much.
evening.
Good evening, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, stay well, stay safe.
That's right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.